everyone, welcome to my craft corner. I'm Heidi with Onigo Stamping. Today I have an awesome card to share with you that uses a variety of techniques, including heat embossing, dry embossing, emboss resist, ink blending, splattering, just all sorts of stuff. It's really cool. All of the dimensions for today's card can be found on my website, as well as pictures of the final sample. You'll find a link to my website in the description to this video, as well as a link to where you can purchase any of the products I use today. Before I get started, if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I would love to be your demonstrator. Whether you need help getting started, you have questions, or you'd like to host a Stampin' Up! Event. I offer a variety of events, including online parties, online classes, and even face-to-face workshops if you happen to live in the mid-Michigan area. I'd love to tell you more about it, so just leave a comment or send me an email if you're interested. If you enjoy this video today, please like, comment, subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends. All right, Onigo, let's get stamping. For today's card, I'm using the Forever Fern Stamp Set, as well as the Here's a Card Stamp Set for the greeting that's going to go inside. I'm going to set aside the Here's a Card Stamp Set for just a minute, and I'm going to start working with the Forever Fern. I've already put my stamps on some blocks, and I'm actually going to start with some Versamark ink pad, because the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a heat emboss pattern on this. So I'm just putting down an extra piece of scrap paper. Actually, I'm going to set that aside for just a moment. I'm going to start with a piece of very vanilla cardstock. I've cut this to be, let me see if I remember. I cut this to be 4 3/4 this way. And then this way, eventually it's going to be 3 1/2. But for right now, I believe I either cut it 3 3/4 or 4 for the time being. Just because it gives me a little bit extra space so I can trim off. Oftentimes when I find I'm stamping, when I get done, it's like, yeah, I like that, but it would be better if it were just, a little bit further this way or this way. So by leaving it just a little bit extra wide, it kind of gives me some wiggle room when I get done to pick the best spot. So I'm going to start with this large, maybe it's an olive branch. I'm not sure what it is. It's a branch with leaves on it. I'm going to start with that one and some Versamark ink because we're going to do some heat embossing. And I'm going to stamp this 3 times along the edge of my card. Before I do that, I'm going to use my old embossing buddy. We don't have these anymore, which is really too bad, but it's a anti-static little bag of powder in here. So I'm just going to rub that on there to kind of get rid of stray embossing powder later. You'll see what I mean. So I'm going to start by stamping this. You're not going to be able to see it really because it is Versamark ink, so it's clear. When I'm sitting here up close, I can kind of see the shininess to it, if that makes sense. So I know where I'm stamping. And I'm just going to stamp this 3 times across the front. I'm going to go ahead and put the cover on my Versamark pad because I don't want to get any embossing powder on there. And then I have some clear embossing powder. Stampin' Up! Used to sell these giant containers of clear embossing powder. We don't anymore. We just have the little ones, but it's the same powder. So I'm just going to dump that on, and you'll see I dump it really generously. And then just tap off the extra. This is where that static bag, the embossing buddy, came in really handy because it helps keep this embossing powder from sticking to places where there isn't Versamark ink. So now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to dump it back in my giant tub of embossing powder. And let me grab my heat gun. So I have my heat gun. I'm just going to heat set this. So what is going to happen is that embossing powder is going to melt and become kind of like a plasticky surface and no longer powder. So I'm just going to heat this. It gets really loud. So I know that this is probably difficult to see because it's clear embossing powder, but maybe you can catch where that is shining from the light, and you can tell that it has been embossed. And that's how you know that you're done heating it, is it gets that shiny look to it. So my next step is to do some ink blending. And I'm gonna start with a Bumblebee ink. And I have a makeup brush here. So when I'm doing ink blending, I started using this makeup brush that I really like. And what is good about it is that it has short bristles that are super compact in there. You probably can't even see. It might look like foam or something when you're looking at it on the screen. But it's actually really tiny bristles that are all tightly compact in there. And I just have a spare block that I'm going to use, and I'm going to do this on wax paper. And I like to do the ink embossing on some wax paper like this or some other non-porous surface because it helps keep the ink from just soaking into my scrap paper underneath and gets it onto my project instead. So I'm just going to rub my makeup brush in there, and then I just kind of pounce it off on my block. And this is just to get some of the extra ink off so I don't get a huge blob right at the beginning. And then I'm going to start off to the side and just pull that onto my cardstock. And I'm not going to cover the whole thing. And see, now I can come back, I can pick up that ink off of my clear block. And I'll just come back in over here and blend some more. So I'm pulling it further than where those embossed images are, but I'm not going all the way over to the left side. So I'm going to put away my Bumblebee ink, and I'm going to bring out some Petal Pink ink. Before I switch colors, I want to clean out my brush a little bit. So I just have this it's an old baby receiving blanket that I have, and I just like to rub it right on there, and that will get out a lot of the ink. And then I can rub it on my paper and I can see that a lot of that ink is gone. So now I can switch colors and grab the Petal Pink. And again, I'm just getting that on, tapping some off, and now I'm going to come in and blend that in. And this is a pretty light color, so you kind of pick up a little bit more of it. I'm going to do the top up here, and I'm just kind of picking some areas that don't already have ink in them and blending into the areas that do have ink already. Now I'm going to come in with my third color, which is Terracotta Tile. This time I'm not going to worry about cleaning off my brush so much because really the Terracotta Tile is kind of a darker color of that Petal Pink. And again, I'm just coming into some more areas that were kind of not touched before and adding it over that Petal Pink especially to kind of create a darker color down here. And just blend that all in. So just like that. Put away my ink for the time being. And I want to make sure, I still have Versamark ink on this stamp that I used earlier. I want to make sure I get that off. If you leave that ink on too long, it does get really sticky and hard to get off. And actually, whenever I use Versamark ink, I like to come in kind of when I'm all done and I'm cleaning up, and I actually use some stamp cleaner on that and really scrub it down pretty good. So I'm going to come back in, try to find a clean spot. I really need to clean this receiving blanket that I have here. But I'm just going to come in and I'm going to rub that ink off, and you'll see that the embossing, where I embossed it, it really resists that. So I can just rub that ink right off. I'm getting fingerprints, which is not good, but we'll just keep going. Next, this card is really layered. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a water brush and I want to flick some water onto here to make some water droplets, water spots on it. So I'm just pushing some water down into my brush, and then I hold it next to my cap and just flick it. Flick it on the edge of my cap. It's not going to show up right away. It kind of takes a minute. As it starts to dry though, it pulls that ink and you'll see those water droplets start to appear. It's just like at home, you know, you leave your sweaty glass of water on something wood, and if you wipe it up right away, it's fine, but if you let it sit there, it leaves a mark. Well, the same thing here. If I wipe this up right away, it probably wouldn't show, but since I've left it sit here for a minute, you can start to see those water droplets appear. Try to get just a few more up there. So we'll let that dry just a little bit, let those water spots come through, and I'm going to do the same thing with my Wink of Stella pen. I love this because it just leaves little glitter drops all over the place. So once again, I'm going to push the Wink of Stella, kind of push it down into the pen till I get a kind of a blob. And then I'm going to flick this on here. And I know this is probably even harder to see those glitter spots. But there is definitely glitter spots on there. Spots, blah, blah. So, all right. I've done some heat embossing. I did some ink blending on top of there. I've created some splotches. I'm actually going to come back in and do some stamping now. And I'm going to start with the terracotta tile. And I'm going to use this leaf from that same Forever Fern Stamp Set. And I'm just going to stamp it kind of in the open spots. And you can stamp it right back over where you have embossed. Because once again, I can grab my dirty rag here. You can also use a piece of paper towel if you want. And I'll just rub that right over. And again, it will just resist that ink. So the embossed part comes to the forefront, and where you've now stamped it kind of goes backwards. I'm going to grab the bumblebee ink and another fern, and again just adding a few more leaves in here just to create a little bit more interest and fill that background up. And finally, take this and kind of rub that off again. So there's the background for my card. And now we just need to finish it up. So remember how I said I left this a little bit extra wide? I'm going to come in with my paper trimmer. And I'm going to trim this down to 3.5. And actually, I think I'm going to take 1/8 of an inch off this side, and I'm going to take 1/8 of an inch off the other side. Just like that. And I stamped this towards the right, but I'm actually going to flip it, and this stamped image is going to be on the left. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to layer it on some bumblebee cardstock. Just like that. And now I am using the Forever Greenery Trim Combo Pack. And I love this. I just got this not too long ago, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So this is like this, it's kind of gauzy, but it's very, very flexible, really easy to tie. And I'm going to start by tying this on the front, and I'm just going to put a knot. So tying this in a knot. Hopefully I left enough of a tail for, you know what, I can tell this is going to be loose. So I'm going to stop, pick it apart, and give myself just a little bit more. All right, here we go. Tie this in a knot on the front of my card, and it's okay if it's not straight, I can straighten it later. really easy. Get a nice good knot in there. Straighten that up a little bit. And I'm just going to trim off my sides. And this will fray a little bit, which looks actually really nice. It gives a kind of a rustic look to it. We're gonna come back with some more ribbon in just a minute, but I wanna stamp one more thing before I do that. I like to tie the ribbon first because I find it easier to straighten up the ribbon first and then do my stamping based on the straightness of my ribbon instead of trying to get my stamping straight. So I have the greeting from the Here's a Card, and it says, "Thank you for being my friend." So nice little thank you note. Also good if your friends really are into Golden Girls. Always makes me think of that. And I'm going to stamp this just above where I tied that knot. And that might not quite be straight. It's hard to do this straight when I'm on camera. So now the other ribbon in that trim combo pack is this gold cord, which is really, really beautiful. And I love tying double bows with this. So one trick I have for this, because this is kind of this roped cord, what it does once you cut the ends is it starts to fray, which looks really cool. But when you have it on your roll in your stash of stuff, you don't want it, unraveling on you. So what I always do is I take a piece of tape and I just put a piece of tape over that end there where I'm going to cut it, and I just cut through the center of it. That way, now that end has some tape on it and it won't unravel in my stash. And I just leave those taped ends on there until I'm done tying my bow. So I'm going to slide that through and see if I can tie a bow here real quickly. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Especially when I'm tying these doubles, it's a lot to keep in my hands. And the tape is sticking to my hand over here. That's okay though. So I didn't cut this other end, so it is kind of a loop, which sometimes is confusing when I'm tying bows and it gets caught in with the other. But again, I like to do that so it doesn't unravel while I'm working with it. And anytime I tie double bows, I like to kind of pull it so one loop is shorter than the other loop. And now I can just come in, and it's kind of crooked, but I like that. I like that kind of crookedness to it on this card. So, and you'll see these ends, they start to unravel. You don't even have to do anything. They'll just do it on their own. So I could just put this on my card front just like this. The bow is being kind of funny, but it's okay. So I could put that on my card front just like that. What I'm gonna do, and I have a terracotta tile card base for this, I'm going to emboss this with the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder. Now, Stampin' Up is coming out with a new embossing machine starting September 1st. But it is very, very similar to the old Big Shot machine, which is what I am using. And with it, they will have a new specialty plate. So if you had the Big Shot before and the new 3D embossing folders, you maybe have this blue plate, right? This plate is going to be the same as the new specialty plate. So if you have some new embossing folders, and I know there are some of you out there that have the new embossing folders but didn't ever get this blue plate, and we kind of have had nothing for the last couple months that you can use, starting to September 1st, that specialty plate will be available, and that's what you need to use these new embossing folders. So I'm using just my regular Big Shot platform, and I've opened up my card, and I'm going to slide that in and just try to line the edge up right with the edge of where the texture is. You have to be very careful doing this. Normally I always put the folded edge of my embossing folder into my Big Shot first, because that is the best way to do it. I don't like to do it with it on the side because I could catch that and kind of wreck the edge of it. So hopefully it's okay. Otherwise, the card just doesn't fit right. So I ran that through my embossing, my Big Shot machine. So now I have that embossed. So my final step is to adhere this to my card front. And for that, I of course am going to use some Stampin' Dimensionals. I missed. We'll move that over. I'm going to put quite a few on here so that it is nice and well supported. And just peel those backs off. And then I'm going to adhere it to my card front. And try to get that centered right where it goes. I just love that texture in the background. So pull my tails just a little bit. Tighten that up a little bit more. It was kind of loose. All right, there we go. So, and that, I always put the card front down and then it's like, that is not straight. So sometimes you can just pull it off a little bit and straighten it up. So there you go, quick and easy card. Lots of techniques being used, lots of stuff going on, but not too difficult. Thank you again for joining me today. Wasn't that card awesome? If you need the dimensions or you'd like to see some more pictures of the final sample, you can find that over on my website. The link to my website is in the description to this video. And remember, there's also a link if you need to purchase any of the supplies I used today. Thank you again. See you next time.